So today I want to talk about fuel for the soul. Fuel for the soul. So many times I think we are trying to find motivation, right? We are trying to find inspiration. And I thought back to a classic arcade game that I think most of us have played. Pac-Man, anybody, by show of hands, you played Pac-Man, right? And what were the bigger circles that you would go eat? Anybody remember what those are called? Power pellets, yes. And so the power pellet is amazing, right? Because when you eat the power pellet, now for a brief period of time, you can go and chase down all these ghosts that are trying to eat you, right? The only problem with the power pellet is that eventually it wears off. Whenever I think about that, I think about there's a difference between inspiration and transformation. You see, inspiration is something that will carry you a little while, but transformation will carry you a lifetime. And so I want you to think about what you have this morning. Do you have inspiration or have you experienced transformation? When we think about all the ways that people try to get hype, right? Anybody, like, when you're trying to, like, go into that game, you know, whatever it doesn't matter if it's basketball, volleyball, cheer competition, whatever it is. It's like you see people always, like, they do this little gathering, right? And they try to get hype, right? It might be a song. I mean, it might be a chant. There's always some person that jumps in the center. It's like, you. And then everybody's like, yeah. And it's like everybody is getting hype, all right? The only problem with that is that once you get on the football field and someone hits you in the face, all of that inspiration goes away, okay? I assure you. They say that every fighter has a plan until he gets punched in the face. And so what I'm trying to say is that inspiration may last for a moment. It may last for a moment, but transformation lasts for a lifetime. So you need to ask yourself, which one are you operating under this morning? Because if you have inspiration, you'll find that it fails you. It fails you. You lose heart. Because we try to fuel our souls with the stuff from this world. And the stuff from this world was never intended to be the foundation stone upon which we build a life. And so what we're trying to find then is a faith upon which we can build upon the rock that is Jesus Christ. So whenever we build upon that, we experience transformation on the inside. So this morning you may have come in here and you're thinking, man, I feel tired, feel stressed, feel alone, I'm hurting, I'm worried about money, whatever yours is. And if you're trying to answer that problem with stuff, you know, you can dive into the bottle, you can take a pill, you can, whatever it is, go on a date. Man, if I just date someone else, everything will be fine. No, I assure you it will not be fine. You need to get healthy before you go out on a date, all right? Because if you anyway, I'm not gonna go off on that right now. Where do you go to get fuel for the soul? Listen to this verse. It says, then the woman left her water jar, went into town and told the men, come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? And they left town and they made their way to him. You see, it starts with your story. It starts with your story. You simply sharing your story. And the chances are, most people sitting in this room have never shared their story with a lost person. And we're going to talk about the reasons why. And it may be that it's been years since you've shared your story. My job, if I do a good job today, if I do my job, is to inspire you to change that very bad habit, okay? Because your story is what they need to start their story. So whenever we think about the myths, there's some certain myths that prevent us from sharing our story, from sharing our message, the message of God. And those myths are, number one, denial. Some of you are in denial. You say, well, I don't have a story. I don't have a story. And you think because you don't have a story that you can't share your life. And it's weird because every time I've ever heard someone say they don't have a story, I think they're usually comparing it to someone else. Like you're saying like, well, that person was a crackhead. Now they're not a crackhead. Well, I never was a crackhead. Well, wait a minute. More than crackheads can tell their story, okay? That was a joke. Anyway, so whenever it comes to your story, let's think about it. Where is your focus at? If you say, I don't have a story, I'm gonna tell you that is inward focused. That premise is on you. You're thinking about you. What are they gonna think of my story? But what if I told you that the emphasis should be on Jesus, that Jesus has a story, and if Jesus saved you, if Jesus pulled you out of the darkness and brought you into the light, if Jesus forgave you of your sins and washed you white as snow, if Jesus forgave you a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth time, and you don't have a story, come on. The only way that you can not have a story is that you're not saved. And if you listen to the rest of this message, we can fix that also today. But don't ever, as a believer, say you don't have a story. Denial. What's after denial? Whenever we think of the reasons why people are unwilling to share this story, I think there's denial and then there's doubt. Like they're not going to believe me. I mean, if I share it, I'm just not a very persuasive person, and you know what? They might ask me a theological question, and I've never been to seminary, and so I'm just not qualified. Did you hear what she did? All she told them was what he told her. So if Jesus told you something that was enough to save you, all you have to do is tell them what he told you. You see, whenever you're in doubt, you're focusing on the outcome. I want you to think about this for a moment. Like, we kind of hold this level of success, and we say, because I don't think I can achieve this success, I would rather not try than to try and to fail. But whenever we think of any kind of sports analogy, like if you're a great, incredible Hall of Fame hitter, you hit 300. That means that 7 out of 10 times you fail, and we call them great. If you're a great shooter in the NBA, you shoot 50% from the field, and they say you're a great shooter. That means you fail 50% of the time. If you're a great quarterback, you complete 60 to 65% of your passes, which means that you fail 40% of the time. Now I want you to think about it. We hold those people up and we say, amazing, amazing. And to take this analogy out to its fullest extent, when we think of Jesus, do you think the greater majority of people that ever came in contact with Jesus, do you think that most of them, like 50%, 60%, 70%, 90%, 100%, which percentage do you think said yes to Jesus? That yes, you're my Savior. Yes, I will follow you. I'm telling you, if you go read the book, Jesus struck out exceedingly more than he hit the home run. So if we predicate our success on their response, we inevitably will inaccurately interpret the equation, because I am not responsible for your response. What I am responsible for is the message. Imagine how crippled I would be if I sat up here every week and I looked out into the audience, and believe me, I see you. You're out there on your phone. You're checking your Facebook. You're checking your Instagram. You're scrolling through. You're playing some dumb game on your phone. I see it. I see it over here, right there. What if I sat up here and I was paralyzed by that? Then I'd go into a shell and I wouldn't even be able to communicate, because I'd be so worried, like, what are they gonna, if they don't respond to me, then I can't. Do you think that someone in here could get set free if you started realizing that the story isn't about you? The story's about God. And you're not responsible for the result, you're responsible for the sharing. Therefore, you can't lose. The only way you can lose is to not try, to not participate. Doubt. Man, denial, doubt. How about disqualification? Another myth we need to bust this morning. People think because of their past, and I don't know where this like myth began, but like if I've done things in my past, then I'm unqualified now to present as truth. So I just want to say, who then in here do you think would be qualified? Because if you think I stand up here as a man perfect and without sin, let's just dispel that myth right now. I am a sinner and a hypocrite, okay? Now we are all even. Does everybody understand? Okay? So none of us are perfect. So I don't stand up here because I possess perfection. I stand up here because I am preaching about perfection. Her story that she went and shared was not that she had been made perfect, but that she knew someone that was perfect. You see what I'm saying? There is a difference and a distinction. And so disqualification does not ever happen when it comes to the Bible. As a matter of fact, you can't ever look at one example where Jesus locked people in the prison of their past. And whenever you think about what he told her, that leads us to point number 2, it's this thing called attribution error. Attribution error. This is something that many people struggle with. Now, I want to ask you a question, and this is a 50-50 ball, okay? So this is going to require participation. I'm going to know a lot about you, okay? So I'm looking at you. I know some of you are strangers, so now we're going to have a little talk, okay? You ready? You? Okay. Some people see the world through a negative lens, half full, half empty. And then some people see the world through a positive lens, half full. Now, by show of hands, how many people know someone who sees life as half empty through the negative lens? By show of hands. Now, you don't have to raise your hand for the other people because we already know who you are. And so I want you to think for a moment. Think for a moment. Attribution error. I'm getting ready to like revolutionize somebody's mind right now. Attribution error means whenever I attribute motive to your actions, I attribute motive to your actions. And the error is it's very subjective. And what happens over time is if I don't like you and you do something, you say something, I tend to attribute your worst possible motive to what you said or what you did. If I do like you and you say something to me that I don't like or I don't want to hear, I think, well, they love me. And so I attribute good motive to what they say or to what they do. Do you see how this could be a little bit perplexing? Because what if God comes to you and he gives you a word? And what if you look at God through a negative lens? And what if you assumed or attributed the worst possible intention to a God word that was supposed to change your life? For instance, this woman, what was the word that was given to her? Go get your husband. Hey, go get your husband. Well, I'm not married. Oh, that's right. That's right. You've been married 5 times, and the one you're living with right now is not your husband. Now, unwritten rules in relationships, okay? There are some things that we never bring up because if I say this thing, it's going to lead to a nuclear meltdown. Does everybody know these rules? If you're married, you should raise your hand. If you don't know these rules, you will find them out very quickly, okay? It's like, you know, if I bring that up, boom, I mean, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, all right? And so let's think about this for a moment. When it comes to this attribution error, if we are reading on the outside looking in, here's this woman broken, alone at the well. She's come out at midday during the heat of the sun, not when people come out. People went out in the middle of, or in the beginning of the morning when it was cool. And so she was trying to get away from everyone, because when we have a past that's chasing us down, we want to be alone, because every conversation seems to inevitably find its way to a place that embarrasses us. And so here she was, and now there's this Jew talking to her at the well, and he says, go get your husband. If there was a conversation that should have pressed this button, she had every reason in the world to attribute negative motive to this man. Number one, He was a man and she was a woman, and they didn't talk in that culture. Number two, he was a Jew and she was a Samaritan, and they didn't talk in that culture. Number three, he's bringing up something that's personal, the problems of her past. And who wants to talk about the problems of our past? And so it could have easily went the other way, and she could have said, well, I am now angry. Because what I found is the number one thing when you introduce things into people's lives in which they need to make changes, most people are not like, you know what, Tim? You are right. I do need to change the way I talk to people. I do need to change the way I interact. I do need to change the fact that I think the negative in most people most of the time. We are jaded, cynical people. What happens when we bring the same mantra and mindset to the Word of God? Is it possible that you could misinterpret, that you could miss what God is trying to give to you? Listen, this woman should have been convicted and sentenced as a criminal as a result of the evidence that Jesus presented. She should have been locked away in the prison of guilt and shame. Yet this message did not convict her as a criminal, it converted her. Are you hearing what I'm saying? She was converted to Jesus by him knowing the worst thing about her. That's crazy, okay? But anyone in here that has met Jesus and Jesus knew the worst possible things about you and said, I love you anyway. I forgive you anyway. And you've blown it time and time again, so much so that you feel guilty about even asking for a second chance again. And yet God is there, faithful as ever, saying, if you would humble yourself and you would turn from your wicked ways, I would hear from heaven and I would heal your land. Man, God is incredible. But you might have to change the way you're looking at it. If you ever want to get past it, at some point you're going to have to agree with God about it. And the great thing I can promise you is the day you do, it will not be guilt that fills your soul. It will be freedom. It will be joy. Man, if you don't have that this morning, I pray you listen to the message of Jesus. 3, he says the message will move them. I want you to understand very quickly, he's not overlooking her sin, her faults, her mistakes. He is overcoming them by his grace, his mercy, and his forgiveness. So we don't come to God and he overlooks it. No, he overcomes it by what he did for us at the cross. So then the message in itself has the power. It's the contents of the message, not the eloquence of the messenger. His narrative does not need your superlative to make it more impactful. You cannot improve upon perfection. So when you are trying to share his story, you don't have to embellish. You don't have to add your twist. You don't have to worry about, is it enough? I promise you, the same message that saved 2,000 years ago, this man told me everything I ever did was enough to entice people toward Jesus. So your message, the message, will move them toward Christ. They left town. Listen, this wasn't an incredible politician. This wasn't someone that was a person of prominence. This was the outcast of the society that God is using as an opportunity to save them all. And sometimes we make this mistake. We would think to ourselves, if I could just win somebody that's great, that I could then have influence. And we kind of say, well, like it'd be a tall task, but let's just say we could save Donald Trump, right? That would be amazing. That would take a lot of grace, right? And the same thing for Hillary, so don't you get on a high horse. All my blue people in here, okay? Look, they all need Jesus, and we could say, amen, yes, that was your chance, all right? Now, I want you to think about this. We would think that if they would just accept Jesus, what we could do for this country. And what we're doing is we're attaching their power to our influence. Man, where does your power come from? Because the last I checked, the power of Jesus is greater than any politician. So when I attach his power to my influence, that's when I gain ground. So this morning, we can't think about how are we going to have influence by, oh, I got to have that relationship. Oh, I got to have that thing. I got to have that, I got to have this stuff. I got to get to this level, and then I'll have it. No. If you would attach Jesus to your life, that's power. That's influence. That's eternal life change. So the message will move them. Now we have to snap in our bipolar message between Jesus and between this woman and the disciples. The disciples are having a bad day. It says, in the meantime, the disciples kept urging him, Rabbi, eat something. Rabbi, eat something. Rabbi, eat. Do you have a friend that no matter what you're feeling, they tell you to eat something? Does anybody else have that friend? Like, you look like you're feeling down. You need to eat something. Did you have a bad day? You need to eat something. You feeling lonely? You probably need to eat something. I don't. Does anybody else know what I'm talking? Anybody else have this friend? Like, I don't know if eating something will help. You know, I'm all for trying, but I'm just saying. In the meantime, the disciples kept urging him. So they're looking at him. They're like, Rabbi, eat something. But he said, I have food to eat that you don't know about. The disciples said to one another, could someone have brought him something to eat? Now, the disciples, man, it's like Jesus is a brain ninja, right? I mean, it's like they can't ever get on the same track. They're sitting there and they walk out and they're like, hey, Jesus, we went into town, we picked up a bucket of KFC, family style, and we just want you to eat. Just eat something. You'll feel better. We know you're tired, you're hungry. And Jesus is like, I have food that you don't know about. And their mind literally just went like this. Right? Like, did somebody bring him? Did he Uber Eats? Did he DoorDash something? Did he call the pizza guy? Because the only people out here when we left was Jesus. And then we walk up and there's a woman. She's got a water pot. She doesn't have KFC. We brought KFC, and KFC's in the NIV. You have to. It's not in your version if you're looking for that. And so their mind is sitting there, and they're so locked in on the physical realm. They're so locked in on their bellies. They're so locked in on what they feel naturalistically, then they can't seem to get their mind around what he's talking about. And so they're saying it to themselves. They dare not say it to Jesus. They're like, do you think somebody brought him food? And you imagine the eye roll of Jesus while this is all going down. He's just like, they don't get it. They don't get it. They surely must have missed something, because it says that when they walked up, the woman walked off. And when she walked off, she shared the message. When she came back, people came with her. And so the disciples must have missed something, because they went into the same city, right? And all they brought back was lunch. They didn't bring back anyone that was lost. So the same people, how could they interact with the same people? Because the only story she had was, he told me everything I ever knew. Surely the disciples had a better story. Would you guys agree? I was at this wedding, and at the end, they ran out of wine, and Jesus came in, turned the water into wine, and it got lit. It was amazing. Water into wine. When we started this relationship with Jesus, we were doing our job. He came up and said, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. We dropped everything and followed after Jesus. They could have shared any of these stories with the people in this city, because God had already prepared the city. It just needed one person to share the story. But the disciples had inspiration. They did not have transformation. They were inspired enough to follow and to sit in the seats, but they were not transformed enough to share the story with a lost and dying world, with someone that was different from them. Are you kidding me right now? Is it possible that people sit in churches all across this land and all they have is inspiration? They have the inspiration to walk behind him and to carry the bucket of chicken, but they do not have the transformation that is willing to say, let me tell you my story. My God, what are we here for? What are we here for? And the message of Jesus Christ, that's what we're here. We're here to share that with everyone we possibly can. He says, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. Fuel to make it to the finish line, right here. My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. Don't you say there's still 4 months? Then comes the harvest. Listen to what I'm telling you. Open your eyes and look at the fields, for they are ready for harvest. Now many Samaritans from that town believed in him because of what the woman said, that she testified, he told me everything I ever did. Do you want to know why you feel lethargic, sluggish? Do you know why you lack passion on a regular basis? Do you want to know why you can only get hype until Monday punches you right in the face? It's because this for you on Sundays is inspiration. It has yet to cross over to the line of transformation. And if you would experience transformation this morning, it will travel with you on Monday. It will get you through Tuesday. You will still have a message and a song in your heart on Wednesday. And it will be a light in a dark place. And so what I'm trying to get across to you this morning is we need to move past words that encourage us or flowery sayings that give us a little bit on a Sunday, just enough to get by. No, transformation happens from the inside out. He says to them, open your eyes. Open your eyes. You see, in this story, we had food that you couldn't eat. We had water that you couldn't drink, and a harvest that you couldn't see. If you're living for the physical realm and you believe that's going to provide fuel for your soul, it will always disappoint. When it comes to your relationships, it will never last. We get hyped. We're going to go to a marriage retreat. Woo! We're going to change it all. We're not going to fight about that anymore. A week later, what are you doing? You're fighting about it. Parenting, we're going to get more strict. We're going to take away the phones at night. Mom, I really need it. I need it to listen to my music when I fall asleep. All I'm saying is that the fuel at some point, Jesus said, it was greater than food. What if you had fuel for your soul this morning? What if you committed to the 107s that are out there, like we committed to the 107s that are in here? I can tell you that when I was 16, I made my choice. I made my choice. For better or worse, for the rest of my life, I will preach this gospel. And I will put sacrifice above myself. I will put the conversation that is uncomfortable, the conversation with people that I didn't grow up around, or the conversation with people that are different than I am. I'll put that above my own comfort. And at some point, if Jesus ever got a hold of your heart, not your head, you would move past inspiration and you would experience transformation. And if you experience that, you'll never be the same again. When we see this in its practical effect, I think that we all know that the job of the church is to go out into the world, right? Win the world. I don't know about you, but I don't have a 7 billion person plan. Do you? Do you? I don't have that. I don't have that, like backstage, we don't have a playbook. Like, here's A, B, 7 billion, okay? That's not what's back there. This is encouraging to me, though. This was actually revolutionary about 4 weeks ago. I've been waiting to preach this for 4 weeks. Jesus said if we want to win the city, all we had to do was reach the one. And if we win the one, the rest will come. Now, the crazy part is, if we would have thought, who is the one? Who is the one in that city? We would think, man, if we could reach Jerry Jones, we could win that city. We would think of some prominent person. And yet Jesus says, there was this woman at this well, broken and undone, married 5 times, and living with somebody in what today's culture sometimes we call living in sin. And we would say, no way. If we're like picking people on our discipleship teams out in the yard and we're going to have a contest to go win the world, like this woman was getting picked last every time. As a matter of fact, if there was an uneven number, they're both looking at each other in like, I don't know, I don't want her. Do you want her? I don't want her. I don't want, okay, we'll just draw rocks for her. I mean, I'm saying she was not going to get picked, and yet God picked her. And as a result of her story, she won the city. Are you kidding me right now? What could God do if we would just open our eyes and see the prize that there are people all around us, and that we don't have to go out and win the entire city. We don't have to win the entire world. We have to win the one that is right in front of us and let God do what God does. And the church said, amen. You can stand to your feet. Our band is going to come out. I'm going to pray for you. God, we come before you right now. God, asking for our eyes to be open. God, right now, that people would quit living on inspiration. And God, they would move to transformation. God, that there's a higher level of learning. There's a higher level of living. And you have our absolute best life in mind. You have our best marriage in mind. You have the best plan for our kids in your mind, in your plans. God, I pray that the person that's been sitting in negativity with false perceptions, attributing your worst to their opportunity all their life, God, that you would shake them to their core this morning, and that you would say to them, God, no, you're looking at it all wrong. You're looking through the wrong lens. I know your mistakes. I know your errors. And I'm not trying to expose you. I'm trying to expunge you. I'm not trying to convict you. I'm trying to convert you. What you're looking at in your shame with guilt, I could change it all with my grace. So this morning, there's no one in here that needs to leave with head hung low. If they would just turn it over to Jesus, it could be part of their redemption story. And 5 years from now, you'll be telling people about the time that your marriage almost cratered. You'll be telling people about the time when you were at your lowest and you considered taking your life. You'll be telling people about how your kids were out of control and you introduced Christ into the situation. I'm telling you right now, if you would move to transformation, we can make all the difference in the world. Are you ready to worship, church?